we were at that point in our lives, right? Like I look back on it and I'm like, wow, as a studio, as a creator, it was the college years, you know, like we were crazy. We were living in the moment and thumbing our nose at authority and feeling like we had a chip on our shoulder to prove something to everybody, and topping ourselves. And that became like the driver was a bigger, more, the way we thought about things. We thought about things in the moment, right? And as I come back to it, see the people that I worked with before, they're back. We all are old, right? And we all think about things differently. We see games differently. We are more deliberate in our decision making. I'm much more deliberate in my decision making. I'm a little chaotic at times, but still, I feel like a lot of Kratos' journey is mirroring my own journey, right? That he's in the middle age of a god's life, and I'm sort of in the middle age of a developer's life, and realizing that I don't have a lot of these in me, but the way that I approach all the problems is so different. And I knew once I realized how long this was going to take, I was like, this has to mean something. I don't want to make something that at the end of it, what I'm proud of is the technical aspects or the, look, we were able to do this, or it's a big moment. It's like, no, I was able to open up the creative vein and express something to other people. I was able to connect to people on a level beyond just vengeance and rage, right? And I hope that people can take away from this something far beyond what I think any of the previous games had offered. A thing I learned when I was working with a lot of directors after 3, was this idea of, you know, finding a moment of truth is extremely hard. To convey that moment of truth, even harder. And if you don't begin in that moment with something that is extremely personal to you, it's hard to feel the truth, right? Because you're merely mimicking, right, what you think it is. And I kind of took that lesson heavily to heart. So on the earlier games, I wrote the God of War 2 with my dad, you know, and it was our conflict during the writing process that kind of spawned wow, this is interesting. Maybe this is what the idea is about. And, you know, in this one, kind of looking at that, wow, I'm at a different phase. You know, I just had my son, and it has caused me to look at things so differently, right? This is Kratos' rage is my obsessive nature, right? And my controlling nature and my inability to have any balance in my work and personal lives, right? That's the battles that I fight. Those are the sort of demons that I'm fighting, and they, in a huge way, I'm fighting them for my son. And that when I see him exhibit the behavior that I hate about myself, it breaks my heart, right? And I'm thinking about, this is even more extreme for him, right? He sees his son unable to control these things, and while you play, you see him in this interesting, like, you know, anger can control you. You need to learn to control it. And it's like, he's terrible at that. He's giving a lesson on something he's terrible at doing. And it's like, I find that weird, like, conundrum with myself of, like, I'm trying to teach my son not to do the things that I do. And I struggle with controlling those things. It's a weird part of the human experience, right? To sort of try to prevent the bad things of your life into your child's life. We had so many rewrites in the early portion just to figure out what that balance was. And so many things came online at different times. So like writing the story, getting the original concept, getting everybody behind it, but then starting to prototype and put things together and shooting, you know, some of these scenes before we even had a level built, right? Before we even have the ability to move through the level, and then you kind of put it in there and figure out, okay, we have to adjust. Everything was always this series of, okay, well, this is already done, so we need to adjust this to this, right? Instead of, oh, we got to redo it all, right? It was a thousands of touches. You know, I think that's the way the studio excels so much. Like why I love working with everybody, because we're all kind of a little bit obsessive, and we all want to keep going in and messing with things because we know it'll be better, right? There is that sense of, you know, something's done because there's nothing left to take away. Yeah. Right? But I think for us, it's not only what to take away, but what to just tweak just a little bit. But part of the, you know, the no-cut camera is part of why I think the movement between these sort of emotional moments, between these sort of action moments, between these sort of even cerebral moments feels natural, because it never feels like we're dissecting anything. It feels like a single experience that you're having throughout all of it. And sometimes in life, things are weird and mashed up. That two very opposite concepts and experiences just butt up against each other. And it's the character's acknowledgement of that I think helps smooth it out. Well, right from the beginning, I wanted to make sure that whatever we did with Atreus was kind of the foundation of what God of War is, which is holistically integrated, right? So that he was never just delivering narrative, but how much involvement in combat. There was a time in the beginning where my initial pitch to the team was, like Dead to Rights, they had the dog, and you'd send the dog out and he would disarm some of the bad guys. And I was like, well, there's some part of that where it's like, he's never in danger until you take action with him. So Atreus will hang out by you. But if you press the Atreus button, you send him into harm's way. So you enter into a risk-reward relationship of, do I want to do this? And if I do this, it's my responsibility that I put him in danger. And I loved the pitch for that. The execution and what it feels like in the game doesn't work so well. It's a neat idea, but what sort of ended up in the autonomous behavior as well as the sort of action was kind of like settled on pretty early of, the camera. I have freedom to control the camera wherever I want. And that became the context. So when I look at something, I'm establishing context. And whenever I press the square button for Atreus, I'm establishing the action related to the context. So if I'm looking at a door and I press the square button, Atreus will go over to the door. I don't have to select from a menu of, sort of commands or anything like that. It was meant to be as seamless and sort of as easy as possible. And because we figured that part out early, everybody felt like that can't possibly be it, right? Like, we have to redo this. We'll go back to this and we'll rip it out and we'll figure out what the real thing is and come up with other things. But it did turn out that was the simplest, easiest way. But how involved he was, definitely, maybe 7 months ago is when it coalesced into the reality. So it was always under construction, right? And always had potential to be like, let's change this completely. I mean, there was times where we had discussions like that of like, let's throw it out. What if we start over? That's scary when you're looking at like 3.5 years into the project. Let's start over. Like, oh, no. I truly do feel like their father, I've told people before, like, I feel like Jaffe and I are like my two dads over Kratos, right? And now Kratos having a kid, it's like this weird extended family. And I feel super protective over them and sort of the development, because at the beginning I had a very clear vision of this is what I want, right? But it isn't like it's the final product. It's the direction, right? It's that land exists in that direction. And I know we have to keep going that way, but I have to be open to the idea that there are many degrees to change the course, but still get there. And it's a huge responsibility because so many people know this character, right? And I'm part of the beginnings of this character, but I'm also wanting to challenge that sense of we think we understand what we see. We see Kratos, and he is what we have presented, but we change the perspective, and we see something completely different, right? And I think, hoping that the fans are open to that sense that, while initially some of the things we present, that doesn't feel like God of War, but when you get your hands on it, and that's the beautiful part about games, is your hands on the game makes all the difference in the world. Watching a video and reading something only gives you a part of the picture. But when you get your hands on it, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where these people who populate this building and work so tirelessly to make this game what it is, that's where their magic really lies. We're still young in compared to the film industry. But when you start looking at the film industry really getting its momentum, right, and the sort of the complexity and the sophistication of both characters and even what the directors were doing, I feel like we're right on this tipping point in the game industry where there's just this magical number of really great, really creative, so incredibly talented people who are challenging us as players, that are saying, games aren't just being fascinated with the fact that we could do it. Yeah. Games are great because you actually care about the why in the experience.